This week on the Baseline Podcast, Josh and I are joined by my dad. We're going to be talking all college football, mainly Ohio State, because why not? And so we're going to be talking about Ohio State defensive recruiting, Ohio State defensive coaching, what my dad thinks needs to happen, what has changed with college football. And finally, we'll finish up with a little bit of Cleveland Browns talk and what needs to happen this year, and if Deshaun Watson is even going to play. All that and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast. I am back this week after a week off. That's Josh. I'm Ben. That's my dad. We'll get to that in a second. But we're here to talk some, sports that like we do here on the podcast. I'm super excited to be back. Josh, how was last week? Johnny did a great job. I listened. How was last week?
Yeah, I enjoyed our discussion with Johnny. We talked a little bit of MLB. We touched on the NBA, the Madden ratings. Also took advantage of his tennis expertise as well. And as things stand right now, Juan Soto still hasn't been traded, and Aaron Judge is still looking like a unanimous MVP selection out of the American League. And like Ben said, guys, he's joined by his dad today. Since we didn't have any Bowdens on last week, it only made sense to double it up this week. So why don't you go ahead and introduce us, Ben? Do we call you Dave, Mr. Bowden, Ben's dad, or how do we do this?
I mean, my dad goes by so many names: Coach, Mr. Bowden, Dave, David, Dad. I don't know. We're just okay. That's Hungarian for you. He's just really trying as he's been here. We'll just for this episode, you can just call him Coach. Okay, since we're talking football. Josh, that way it's not as awkward for you and you're trying to
he's
change
got
the
the
name
coach hat on.
Yeah, he's got the coach hat on, coach mind. But no, it's super excited to have my dad. It's funny because that's where I learned sports from, as Josh and I have talked on this show millions of times. And to have him on to talk about sports, talk about Ohio State football, since we've had some Michigan people on, I think it's ever right to have somebody who's just as passionate about Ohio State football as I am, but also has got the coaching background, who's coached the game, who's watched probably every Ohio State game since probably before I was born. And so I think that's the perfect person to come talk about Ohio State football, to give them maybe an older view than we've had a lot of guests on, right, that were younger, kind of that new age of fan. But I would really like it to have that kind of someone that's a fan but knows what they're talking about in the sense of the football sense of it on the field, things like that. So my dad, who's coached many sports but coached football for a long time, he is here with us, which is super exciting. We're talking about Ohio State football because I'll be honest, Josh, I'm really tired of talking about Michigan football. It was really getting old. I'm just saying.
Yes, as much as it was fun to talk to David Cohn and James Yoder, and I would love to chat with them again sometime. I know that was very difficult on Ben. So, I mean, we appreciate Ben for being a trooper through all that. But yes, we do get to talk a little bit more Ohio State focus today, which we haven't done, I believe, since our episode with Chris Drew.
Yes, that is true. And I'm super excited to talk about the defense, which is primarily what we're going to talk about this episode, because that's kind of like where my dad he loves it. He's old school, right? He loves that kind of defense mentality. It's the thing that he would tell me all the time last year sucked. So if you're hearing from me, I mean, that's where it is. But before we get into any of it, we do want to say, if you are listening to this here, this usually comes out on Monday, Tuesday, then you would have known that on Sunday, the NBA great Bill Russell passed away. So we want to just send our prayers and condolences out to Bill Russell's family. I don't know about you, Josh, but anytime you hear the name Bill Russell, you think of someone who is one of the greatest of all time, for sure.
I mean, is anybody ever going to win 11 rings again, Ben?
No.
That's how many he had. The way that the NBA is structured now, I just don't think anybody's ever going to be able to play at that high of a level. We marvel at LeBron playing in 8 or 9 straight finals, just playing in it. And then Bill's out here winning 11 of them. That's never going to be done again.
No, it's not. And Dad, what about you? Did you ever get to watch Bill Russell in action?
Not really, but he was Red Auerbach was the coach for a lot of those years, and Bill Russell, and would go up against Wilt Chamberlain a lot when Wilt Chamberlain was in his prime too, and when he played for Philadelphia. And then Bill Russell obviously played for the Celtics, and he was only 6'9" and did everything at 6'9". He wasn't even a 7-footer or anything like that. He'd dominate games, get rebounds, score, you name it, he did it. He was the man. I mean, they didn't mess with him off the field or on the court or off the court. He didn't mess with him.
Yeah, I think it just goes to show that I think Bill Russell. I saw a stat, Josh, and you'll think this is crazy. He had 12 straight seasons of 1,000 rebounds. 1,000 rebounds. You don't even see that anymore. 12 straight.
Yeah, the game. I think the game has just changed too much. Like I know you mentioned Bill only being 6'9". I mean, that was still really tall for back in the day,
Oh
and
yeah.
now there's just so many guys that are like around 7 feet tall, and you got multiple of them on teams, and the league's just so much deeper now with players and teams. Like it's just going to be tough to do
Mm,
some of these accomplishments ever again.
yeah. So, Josh, let's talk. I mean, first off, again, our prayers and condolences to Bill Russell's family, and to just I know the NBA is really taking this. It's a hard thing to lose one of your NBA greats. But Josh, what are we going to be talking about this episode? I know you have some great topics to talk about with my dad. To talk about some Ohio State defense.
Yeah, I'd like to just kind of start off with a general discussion on coaching at Ohio State, because I imagine, sir, that you've gotten to see some of the greats like Woody Hayes come through, and then following him were guys like Earl Bruce, John Cooper, Jim Tressel, and Urban Meyer, and Luke Fickell in there sprinkled in just for that one forgettable season that we don't talk about anymore. But how would you stack up Ryan Day? Because to me, he's already like one of the top 5 coaches in college football right now. Where does he stack on your list of Ohio State coaches? I know that like for all-time talk, it might still be too early. Plus, he doesn't have a national championship yet. But what do you think of Ryan Day in just his short stint at Ohio State so far?
Well, I think he's an offensive guru. I think um, he knows what he wants, and he made the changes on defense because he was not happy. He knows his job is not about winning the Big Ten and just winning the Big Ten and beating Michigan. But that's the thing. You got to beat Michigan. He knows that loss is in his craw, and it's just stuck with him. If they had played in 20, he'd have probably laid 100 on Michigan. That's not a doubt. I don't doubt that at all. That he'd have ran the score and just kept it
I don't
going.
doubt it either. That was
Put the
not a good
pedal on the
Michigan team.
metal, and he'd have just let it go. And we know Michigan was dodging. James Yoder and those guys can say what they want, but Michigan was dodging Ohio State that year. It's legit. They were dodging them. But Brian Day over all those other coaches, John Cooper couldn't beat Michigan, and Jim Tressel turned that around and beat them and continued to whip on them. And then Urban Meyer continued that, and Woody, he made it as passion that they put their pants on just like everybody else. And since Woody became coach, I think the record of Ohio State and Michigan is predominantly a tie. There's not the dominance. The dominance occurred way back in the early history of this series. The later history of the series is predominantly Ohio State, even said once Woody took over, and that's why he kept pushing the gold pants thing even more after it was created back in the 40s. They put their pants on like everybody else, and we put our pants on, and then Woody just kept it going, and then it just blossomed into the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. And then Earl Bruce, he was a passionate Ohio State guy. John Cooper just didn't understand the thing, but now it's just the way it is.
Where would you rank Ryan Day right now with Ohio State legendary coach? Would you say he's top 5, or has he still got to prove to get to that? Is there still would you still put Woody Hayes, Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer above him, or do you say Ryan Day is creeping into that top 5? Do you even put Earl Bruce ahead of him?
Well, no, I think he's already solidified himself. He's moving very quickly up the ladder. If he continues, he's going to win a national championship. I mean, he's getting. I've never seen so many top recruits. That roster is like the roster of Georgia or Alabama roster. It's way different than it ever used to be. Urban Meyer started, and then Ryan Day just continued the just the pattern that's going on. And it's hard to say. I mean, Woody's going to be Woody. I mean, his coaching tree is all the coaches that are out there. Even Nick Saban was on Woody's staff. I mean, come on. Almost all these guys, or almost every one of these guys, somewhere, every major program, what staff do they come through? Woody Hayes. So They all had their chance to be on his
So
staff.
you would say
Woody's still number one. I mean,
Yeah.
by far, he's number one. I mean, there's never going to be a guy that I don't think they're ever going to. I don't know if anybody's going to be around long enough to surpass Woody's coaching record as far as wins. But if Ryan Day keeps staying, if Ryan Day stays, and he loves Ohio State, his kids are in Ohio and his kids are living here, so he loves Ohio State. So I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, he's got it all. He's got everything he ever wants in Columbus. So
He does. Yeah. He's got, I mean, he's got that machine going. He's got the salary. Like, I mean, he's got Ohio State really at a great desirable place to be at. And I think if he were to ever leave, it'd have to be after he won a national championship and then maybe for the right NFL opportunity to come about. Cause I mean, we just watched Urban Meyer try to go to the NFL and he went into a terrible situation. He just couldn't handle it. So I think Ryan Day will learn from that and only go to the NFL if it's like a good fit overall. And
remember, Nick Saban went to the NFL and was a flop.
Yeah, I think
Now
his best season was like 6-10
football.
or something like that.
Yeah, he dominates college football, and he was a flop in the NFL.
Yeah, some guys are just built for, I feel like, for either the college game or the NFL game. But it would have been interesting to see Nick maybe give it a couple more years in the NFL because he wasn't fired, but maybe he would have been fired if it was like year 3 and 4 in Miami, because they're a lot more quick to fire you in the NFL, I think, than at college.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But we have seen Urban Meyer go through some bad defenses at Ohio State. Like 2018's defense was absolutely awful. That one ranked really low in the scoring and total defenses I was checking. And then flipped over to 2019, and I mean, it was one of the best defenses in college football with guys like Chase Young and Jeff Okudah. Like that was a fun team to watch overall, offensively and defensively, even for me as a non-Ohio State fan. And now we're kind of in a similar spot where the offense in 2021 was absolutely insane, and then the defense is what was holding the team back. So Ryan Day has made those adjustments. Matt Barnes is gone, Kerry Coombs is gone, and Al Washington's gone. We got a new DC in the house with Jim Knowles. So, I mean, he's doing a lot to fix that defense. And I've talked about it with Ben before about what we could expect to see from this defense. Is Ryan making the moves necessary?
Oh, yeah. I think you don't get rid of a whole defensive staff if you don't want to expect something to change. And that's with any coaching level. If you're going to change things and you change the entire coaches, okay, you're gone. He doesn't hold back. Ryan Day knows how to win football. He's been around. If you don't get the job done, he's going to get rid of you. He doesn't bring in his cronies like some other guys did. Shall I not name Urban Meyer? Brought in his cronies that he did in the past, and then them cronies is why they were so lousy on defense. I mean, last year's staff, they couldn't coach hot butter with a butter knife. They were terrible. They had guys out of position. They didn't have guys in the proper positions. Guys were thinking. In football, you cannot think and be dominated by thinking. You got to react. You got to see with your eyes and react to what you see. And if your linebacker sees and he's making the play and he sees and he's got a lane, he's got to take that lane and go and get the ball. See the ball, get the ball. Defense hasn't changed from 1950 to 2022. It's still all about making plays. And when you're thinking too much as a defensive or any kind of football player, you think too much, and then you're just going to have problems. And the only guy that can really think is a quarterback. Has to read with his eyes. Linebackers and linemen and defensive backs all have to read with their eyes. They have to see understand what they're seeing.
Do you think though that Jim Knowles is the right fit for what we're looking for? Did Ryan take the right guy, or was this too much of is this too much of an unknown right now, or do you think Jim Knowles is going to be a guy because his defense is kind of not wacky, but his defense is very unique to what he does, and we've seen how at Oklahoma State it took him a couple years to get it acclimated. What do you think? Because you're hearing a lot of analysis kind of up and down, like will this be a good defensive fit? What do you think about Jim Knowles? Because that's the biggest name. Obviously, you have some new DB coaches, but specifically with Jim Knowles, Is this the right fit? Do you think this is a guy that's going to make this defense, like what you say, to play and not just to and not think?
Well, they had to change the defense, and they went to a defense that fits the style of what's going through college football right now. What's the big college football new thing is RPOs and run pass option, have your linemen zone read and slide to where they're supposed to be, and then you read it, pull it out, and toss it out there. You got to have a defense that's capable to do that. And the defense we had last year was I don't know what that was, but that wasn't defense. That was like, okay, give up 45-yard runs. Okay, let's play the same defense. Let's see if we can give up another 45-yard run. Well, they did. Oregon spanked them, and so did Michigan. Meat chicken. Excuse me, I said that. Shouldn't have said that one. It's be meat chicken. They let meat chicken beat them, and that shouldn't have happened. Yeah, but I think the proof's in the pudding, and that's why when you look at recruiting, why recruits are saying, maybe I'm not going to come there yet. I don't know what kind of defense got. But even though they're losing some guys, you got to remember they got some guys. They still had 3 defensive backs. They just lost a kid. He said, I'm going to decommit. Well, he's a Florida kid. Man, these kids, you got to constantly be on them, constantly hounding them and saying, hey, you're going to come, you're going to come, you're going to come. And if they don't, they don't. But they're wanting to see how his defense goes. And Jim Knowles, he was coaching with like maybe 1, 2, 3 stars there at Oklahoma State. Like, come on, Oklahoma State. And what defensive guy is going to go to Oklahoma State? There's 2 OSUs, and which one are you going to pick? Well, I ain't going to pick Oklahoma State. What are they going to do? They score 45 points a game and give up 45 points, But so he had a top defense, and at a school that doesn't have very many top-notch recruits. Here he's got 4 and 5 stars. So what's he going to do with 4 and 5 stars? Well, we'll see what he does with 4 and 5 stars. So
yeah,
I think they're kind of waiting to see how things are going to go. And they're only going to play with, there's also these linebackers. Dude, they're playing 2 linebackers, and they got 9 guys that could start on the roster. 9 linebackers for 2 spots. Okay. Well, there's 1 and 2. There's 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, 9. And okay, maybe they play Wisconsin and maybe Michigan that tries to run it down your throats, and maybe you throw another line. You still got 9 for 3 spots. So it's not like they're going to, it's killing them. This is 1 year, and everybody's like, all the Twitter's freaking out. Everybody's freaking out. And I'm just like, hey, they want to see Ohio State in action. Big defensive tackles are leaving and stuff. But this kid, his parents want him to stay at Central Florida over Ohio State. That's a kid they never were going to get because his parents didn't want him to go to Ohio. What are you going to do? Can't do anything about those kind of kids. And the kid, this Johnson kid that reneged on his, and it's just a commitment. People forget that they're can't sign a dotted line until December. So you got to keep after these kids for another 6 months.
Yeah, we see a lot of guys decommitting now, I think, with even more so with the NIL and just transfer portal being what it is now. But that's a whole other topic. But I really like the point you brought up about the talent level of Ohio State. They do have the talent there. They have the 4 stars and the 5 stars on that defense. But another thing that was working against them last year was just the youth. There were so many, Denzel Burke, freshman 4-star corner, I believe, is starting. And you would never see a freshman start at corner at Ohio State. You should never be in that kind of a situation where you need a freshman to start. So I think that's going to help Knowles, not just with the increase in talent that he's going to have at Ohio State, but also these kids are young enough that I think, get into the system for a year or 2. And maybe next year, not this coming season, next year is the time that we'll really get to see this defense, how it's been unfolding. But Ryan Day has high expectations. He said at media days that this was going to, his expectation is top 10 defense. So,
well, Josh, it's kind of, I think you said this in the past, and I think it's interesting to me. I think you've said this in the past that's what makes a difference between good teams. Let's look at Florida, for example. The inconsistencies, what cause you to be mediocre in college football. And Ohio State in Ohio State's eyes, right? Or my dad's eyes or my eyes, we had a mediocre year, right? 10-2, that is just, it's terrible, right?
Texas A&M fans would kill for a 10-2 season right now.
No, remember they don't pay for players, Josh. Remember, we don't pay for players. But But no, it just goes to show, I think, and I think you said this before when you were talking about Florida, like it's frustrating because Florida loses guys to Ohio State, right? Or to those kind of things. And I think it goes to show that there's a name brand there, but there's also coaches. And I think my dad is right. It might take a year for these kids to go, okay, I'm still going to play ball if I go to Ohio State, right? Like right now it's an unknown thing. Like, am I going to play if I go? But again, with a new defenses, yeah, you're playing two linebackers, and now you have freshmen that could start at Oklahoma State if they wanted to at Ohio State, right? Like there's all these guys that play at Ohio State that could start at Oklahoma State, 90% of them, right? So I think it's very interesting to look. And again, if you're going to compare Ohio State to Alabama, which is like what we like to do because you want to see if they're going to stand up, Alabama loses recruits, right? They lose different guys. But I think Ohio State fans were so critical on Ohio State that sometimes we forget the bigger picture and the fact that, hey, we already have a ton of dudes that are really good. And these guys ain't coming for a year and a half, 2 years. So I think that's the other thing that you have to kind of we have to measure as fans that, hey, it's okay if you lose one. It's okay if you lose two. Now, if you start getting over two, then it starts getting worried. But it's like maybe there is something more to it than just that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, are you gearing more towards this last weekend or whatever, where all the fans freaking out about the terrible recruiting weekend?
Yeah, like it's okay. So I watch Minnesota sports, obviously, and I hear their thoughts, and there's just all this. I'm like, look, I get it. Like they should have landed at least a couple of those kids. Like, let's be honest. Like you're Ohio State, you should be able to land a few of those kids. But at the same time, I've seen dudes flip to Ohio State, 2 days before the signing day, right? And I've seen dudes flip away from Ohio State. Like the guys you get to come there are the guys that you want to have and the guys that want to be there. Do you want a guy that doesn't want to be there? He's just there for the NIL money. We've seen that. We saw that in Quinn Ewers. He came for a year, pretty much just wanted his NIL money, got to where he needed to, and then he transfers to Texas. So that's my thought process on the whole thing, is that I'm not like throwing up the red sirens right now, right? Like I'm not going, oh boy, this is terrible. But I'm also going, okay, it is a little weird that we can't really seem to nail down some defensive guys. But at the same time, we did nail a quarterback. So I don't know. It's weird. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I mean you guys have had weekends where you're landing Brandon Innes and Carnell Tate and Noah Rogers, and Brian Hartline's just looking like the greatest recruiter of all time. So it's like for every win that you get kind of like that, I feel like there's going to be some L's sprinkled in there. And I guess that's kind of what this weekend was. And unfortunately for you guys, it was also on the defensive side, which is, I guess, the glaring weakness right now.
Yeah. And I think it is tough. And I don't know, Dad, what do you think? But you've seen throughout the years, you've seen Ohio State recruit some amazing linebackers, the AJ Hawks of the world, the Bobby Carpenters, the Chris Spielmans. You've seen all these guys play. You know what a Ohio State defense should look like. Are you worried, as not just as a Ohio State fan, but are you worried as like if you're a coach, if you're in that locker room and you're trying to recruit these guys and they're not coming, like what right now is going through your head as someone that has been following Ohio State since you were a kid? You've seen some of the greatest linebackers, DBs, defensive linemen come through. Seems like the only place we nail on the defensive end right now is defensive linemen. That's because you have one of the greatest
Larry
coaches.
Johnson, the greatest of all time.
So my question to you is, are you worried in that sense?
No, because they haven't proven themselves on defense the last few years. But here a few weeks ago, we got Jason Moore. And that kid is like a young all over again. He's a kid out of the same area, the triangle over there in Maryland area. And he's 6'6", 255 pounds as a 18-year-old kid. He comes to Ohio State and gets in that weight program. He'll be 275, 180 pounds playing defensive end, running a 4.46 or a 4.5. I mean, those are freaks. And they're still getting kids like that, and they still got kids coming in. It's just these kids want to see what they're doing. I mean, they got the kid they got I can't think of his name all of a sudden from last year. The defensive tackle, that kid's going to be a superstar. He's 315, 20 pounds, and he's just going to –
Tyleik Williams?
Tyleik Williams. That dude's going to be a beast, and he's a defensive lineman. They've got other defensive linemen. They're mostly seniors, and you want to try to replenish the load, but I can guarantee you next year their focus is going to be on as many defensive linemen as they can get. And if he ends up with a top, even if it's not top 10 like Ryan Day wants, but ends up being top 15, dude, he's going to get defensive people to commit. Say, hey, yeah, I'm going to go play for that defense because they're going to win them some ball games. So.
Yeah. And even like in the years that Ohio State's defense has been bad, like 2018 and stuff, like they just always seem to have like these good defensive linemen and even defensive backs come through. Like, I mean, there was a time where you guys had Denzel Ward, Marshawn Lattimore, Malik Hooker, like all these great defensive backs on the defensive line. I mean, currently we're looking at, I mean, a lot of young guys like Jack Sawyer and JT, you mentioned Tyleek, and Zach Harrison's like the lone veteran in there that you hope can end his career on a high note, because he hasn't really exactly lived up to expectations. But it's always kind of been like linebacker lately. Like we have seen good linebacker classes come through, but really like that's kind of been the area that's been lacking to me. And I'm big on linebacker play. Like Ben can attest to that. It's something I wish my Cleveland Browns would take a little bit more seriously, but maybe even, I think, is Knowles' background linebackers, Ben? I'm trying to remember.
I mean, Knowles is the one that's coaching linebackers. Like he's the guy that does. I mean, because it's the unique part of his defense, right? Like you have it's unique. And you look at these defense, and like I'll say this, Josh, you have CJ Hicks who's coming in as a freshman, he's going to be a stud. Like he's a freshman. He's already 225 pounds as a freshman. He's from Dayton, Ohio. You have a kid from my area, from Marysville, Gabe Powers, who is also going to be another kid that's reminds me a lot of like an AJ Hawk, kind of a guy that I think is just going to be, he's going to be good. He's going to be really good. You still have Reed Carrico coming back for a second year. You have Pete Pile Gadiote, who I can never say his name right. He's coming back for his 5th year. You have Steel Chambers, who when he started playing more late in the year, who just, if you guys don't remember, switched from running back to linebacker. The dude's fast and he's still learning how to tackle, but he's going to be good. You have Terade Mitchell, who's a graduate senior coming back. You have Melton, who is he hurt, Dad, or is he? Yeah. So yeah, you have Eichenberg, who came out of nowhere. And by the way, I want to point out everyone right now is I know Cade Stover's listed as a tight end, but we all know Cade Stover is truly a linebacker, and I would not be shocked if by the end of the year, that's what we said last year. Okay, we never know.
Yeah, I think it sounds like G. Scott's going to be tight end, and I mean, you might as well just move Cade to linebacker.
Yeah, you might as well lose.
They don't need 3 linebackers. Cade Stover's got to play the 3rd linebacker. They only 90% of the time they're going to be in 2 linebacker sets. They're going to have a weak side linebacker and a middle linebacker. The strong side linebacker is going to be a hybrid freak. It's going to be Jack Sawyer probably, and he's a freak, and JT Tumalau and Zach Harrison. This is going to be a freak defense, and that 5th guy is going to be moved all the way around, all over the place. Sometimes it'll be a defensive back, sometimes it'll be a linebacker, and they're already confusing the offense even in practice. From what I've been hearing, they're gonna freak people out with that defense.
I do wonder too, like with finishing off on Cade, like Ohio State's offense just doesn't utilize tight ends, so might as well just give all the depth to your defense that you can.
Yeah, why not?
He's going to be a blocking tight end. They're going to use him to knock us.
That's Mitch Rossi.
Well, no, he's a fullback.
That's my man Rossi.
He'll be in the flex. He'll be the flex guy, but when they need a tight end to knock some snot bubbles out of somebody, it'll be him.
Have you noticed, Josh, by the way, I just want to like pause this segment here. Have you noticed that my dad and Chris Drew are totally opposites? Like my dad is this nerdy like coach, and Chris Drew just brings in all the comedy. Like, and they're combining into like this one weird guest that if we had both on at the same time, I think it'd be hilarious. Honestly,
since you brought Chris up, that reminds me of a question that we should ask your dad.
Oh yes.
Do you consider Michigan to be Ohio State's rivalry or Clemson?
Right here.
Meat chicken. Anytime you can beat meat chicken. And remember, Woody Hayes said, they asked him, why'd you go for 2? Because I couldn't go for 3.
Right.
But I'll say this, Josh, we have to explain to Dad. Okay, so this was Chris Drew, and Chris, if you're listening, I'm really sorry. Okay, but you had your statement was
it's an unpopular opinion. We're finding out.
Yes,
I understood where you were coming
we've
from.
we've talked to Michigan people, Josh, and they both agreed that it's still the rivalry. Like it does anyways. But basically, Dad, Chris says that because Ohio State had been beating Michigan pretty much, that and Clemson beat us what did he say, 2016? No,
2016 they got you. They also got you, I think, in like a New Year's Six bowl, maybe the year before with Taj Boyd, and then
2018.
2018, and then you guys faced off again. Was it 2020?
Yeah, 2020. Yeah,
but you also faced in the playoffs in 2019 too.
Yeah. So basically what Chris was saying was that he feels like the Michigan isn't really the rivalry anymore. And Chris knew it was going to be a very sensitive subject, but I just think as a Ohio State fan, I don't know how you can say that. Like, I get it. Clemson is a rivalry, but you can't say it's bigger. He said it basically is bigger than the Michigan.
Basically, because Clemson's been the team that's been keeping Ohio State from like national championships. It hasn't been Michigan. Like Michigan's just like been such an easy team to beat that it's just like another regular season game to him. That now, like the expectation is Ohio State in the playoffs, and more often than not, it's been Clemson that's been keeping them away from a title. So Clemson is now the rivalry in his eyes, not Michigan.
What is your comment on that, Dave Bowden?
Well, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, we'll just watch and see what the rivalry means, because I think there's going to be some wood being laid, and it's going to be a 50 spot, at least a 50 spot on that day, because Michigan keeps running their mouth. So I hope they keep running their mouth. But Clemson, dude, after we got jobbed in that one game and then came back and spanked them, man, I'm more worried about Alabama and Georgia than I am Clemson. I'm not even worried about Clemson anymore.
This season's going to be very telling, I think, because Clemson had what we would consider an off year last year at 10-2, and will they, as they keep losing assistants, be able to maintain the pace that they've been having? And then I think, the rivalry between Michigan and Ohio State got fueled last year. Like, as much as it sucked for Ohio State fans to lose that game, we needed a Michigan victory there to renew it and add fuel to that, just because like it has been like a boring series to watch. But now that we have like a revamped, motivated Ohio State team, and we have a Michigan team that's got a little bit of added swagger, whether it's warranted or not, like it's going to be a game that I think both fan bases are going to be much more amped for than usual.
Josh, all I'll say is that my dad is probably pushing so many people's buttons in this episode. I feel like we have the most my mom told him to watch what he's saying, and I think he's already started pushing people's buttons, but he's got to be the bad guy every once in a while, right?
Yeah, let's check that subscriber count once we're done, Ben, if we can get below 200 again.
Let's see what's below 200.
6 wins from tying the series against Meat Chicken. Might be 7 now since they won last year, but it's pretty close from tying them, and they dominated from before the 50s, so that tells you anything. So, they may be the all-time winningest program.
They've also been one of the oldest programs like in college football history, period. Like they had like a 20 to 30 year head start on Ohio State, I think, but I might be exaggerating that a little bit, but it was a pretty significant
That's okay,
lead.
Josh. That's what we do here.
That's what we do. We exaggerate to fit our narrative, right?
Yeah, of course. That's what we learned from some amazing politicians. Oh, that's my political joke for the day. Anyways,
there it is.
So, Josh, I have a question for you. I think Dad can touch on this too. Do you think, as someone that grew up in Ohio, right, and you grew up watching, the AJ Hawks play and the Bobby Carpenters play, and some of these other great, Malcolm Jenkins and Chris Gamble, who we talked about a few weeks ago with Chris Drew, who was just a freak. I mean, the guy was just ridiculous, right? Do you feel like having a great defense at Ohio State would really, really give like the state of Ohio kind of like, I don't know, like this identity? I feel like Ohio football has gotten away from this defense. Like, I just felt like we always, when you go to Friday nights, you always want to play good defense. I feel like now there's not that identity of like, let's play hard-nosed defense. And I wonder if we have a good defense at Ohio State, it brings back that type of mentality to the whole state of high school football and college football again.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, just because, football as a whole, like the teams that we've been seeing dominate, like 2019 LSU, and even the strength of this Ohio State team lately has been the offensive play. Like you you got to have like that insane offense, and then the defense just has to not suck, basically, right? Like that's kind of the formula we saw work for LSU. We saw that work for Cam Newton's Auburn team and a couple others here and there. And very rarely do we see one where it's like you dominate on the offense and defense like some of the Alabama teams have. And then like way out of nowhere last year, we see historically great Georgia defense with like an average offense, like come and win a national championship. So it can be done, but I feel like if we're going to try to make defense like the emphasis, like, and I don't want to offend the defensive coach here, but it's like you're going to end up with a program similar to maybe like Iowa, where, I mean, you're using your defense to like try to keep you in games, and then hopefully the offense can like scrape together 20 points and pull off some wins. But I think Ohio State's identity from here is going to be like that elite offense, and then the defense just has to be like in that top 20 range. Like it's not going to be anything that's like absolutely insane like what we just seen from Georgia or like some of these other Alabama defenses, but it has to still be like one of the top 20 in the country. Otherwise, it's like you're not going to be able to handle it against in the big games. Like it's got to be high enough, but it doesn't have to be like top of the top.
What would you say to that, Dad? Do you think that Ohio State defense needs to be back to really to get Ohio in general, high school football and college football? Do you feel like it needs to get back to that, those AJ Hawk defensive days to bring that kind of mentality back, that viciousness that has been missing?
No, I don't. I think football has changed. That's where it's changed over the years. It used to be, I mean, that was an aberration, I think, last year, because you look at Alabama, their defenses have not been dominant, and they've won national championships because they were throwing the ball all over the place. Clemson, when they won, they were throwing the ball and they had a good defense, but they didn't have a great defense. And last year, Georgia just had a bunch of freaks on defense because they went out and everybody their team could run. I mean, they're all running 4.5s and 4.6s and 4.4s on their defense. I don't think there was one guy slower than 4.8 on their entire defense. That includes their tackles. And you got a defense like, there's no way you could have the greatest offense in the world. You're not going to stop that. But they all graduated or left for the NFL. So what are you left with? I mean, look at their quarterback play. They couldn't pour water out of the boot if the directions were written on the heel. I mean, it was not a good offense. I don't know. I mean, if they ran the ball, they were okay, but they didn't have it. They couldn't throw the ball. Their top receiver, he went down, and so they couldn't really throw the ball very well. Yeah. And then you go out and look at Ohio State. I mean, they're putting up 50 points. All you got to do is hold a team to 20 points. Look at the NFL. They have a great defense. The NFL now is a team that holds a team to around 20 points a game, because the NFL, the top teams are scoring 35 points a game. So,
yeah, we've just seen offensive play like in football, both at the college and pro level, just elevate to like new heights. And then also with like rule changes and like referees favoring offensive players and like pass interference situations, it's just like, man, it is so hard to like not only play defense anymore, it seems like, but to be at like an elite defense, like at the level of like the 2000 Baltimore Ravens, or like those old Ohio State teams, or like those old Miami Hurricanes teams in that range too. Like it's just going to be so hard to like ever have a defense at that level.
I think that's what's crazy, but also, Dad, and I know Josh wanted to know this too, because we had talked about it. What are the differences you have seen from the 90s when you coached and like in the early 2000s when you coached defense and on the football field in high school? I know it was high school, and what are the differences between now and then? Now versus then? Like, what are the differences you've seen, how football is coached defensively, and how it's maybe become either better or worse, or what is your thoughts on that?
Well, I think quarterback play has changed the way ball is taught now. I think more teams are not relying on ground and pound and then play defense, because sometimes you may not have the personnel, so you got to change and adapt your personnel. And a lot of times it's easier to coach a team that scores 20, 25 points a game in high school versus a team that scores 16 or 17 but shuts everybody out, because you may not have the horses to handle that. It's all cyclical. High school is probably more so than college, because college you can go out and get your kids, and NFL you draft them. But high school you get what you get kind of thing. And some of the bigger programs, they're changing too. But even though it's like St. Ed's, was it St. Ed's? Yeah, I think it was St. Ed's that won Division I football. They just had super big guys, super fast guys, and it didn't matter what kind of defense you're going to play. They were going to outscore you. And I mean, they beat all kinds of teams that just had really good teams. I went to watch a Findlay, my old high school, play another school, Springfield South. We used to be Springfield. It was Springfield High School down and they played at Bell Fountain. So I was watching that game and I was just shocked at what I saw out there. The final was 13-0 was the final. I was like, wow, that's weird. Then they go to the championship game, Springfield does, and they get waxed by Lakewood St. Ed's. And it just, oh my goodness, it was just.
So basically, you said it's changed a lot since.
Yeah, it's changed a lot since I was coaching, and it's a lot different coaching in college. College, the gap is like you start. Everybody starts in junior high like this, high school's like this, college is like this, and NFL's like this. Just the speed of the game is just it gets greater as you go up, and the speed of the game is what changes things. You got to know things like really quick. You can't just go out there and play like you used to. You got to know things. I mean, even in high school now, quarterbacks got to be able to read. They got to be able to read defenses. Before, it used to be just if you had some super studs, you just went out and played. And now you got to be able to read defenses, know where the defense is, and it's a change.
That was Josh. If you didn't know, that was Josh. He was the stud in high school.
I did not play high school ball, but I enjoyed watching it. And I mean, even from the time I was in high school and now, like, I mean, you see some of these high school quarterbacks at the Elite 11 camps and stuff like that. Like, they process things so fast. They got like the NFL arms and they're getting coaching from like the time that they're 8 years old. Like it's like kids aren't even like born to be quarterbacks anymore. They're just built from like the young age.
They're bred.
They're bred. There you go. Yeah, it's like a dad that has a decent amount of money to pay for top coaches like Quincy.
That wasn't my dad, by the way. That wasn't
my
dad.
No, it clearly wasn't. Yeah.
Well, when I was in high school, there were three divisions: AAA, AA, and Single A. And now State of Ohio, there's 7.
Yeah, 7. Yeah. In Indiana, where I've been the last several years, we got 6. So I mean, there's a lot more.
It's changed. It's changed a lot. It's just. Allow more teams in now. It's ridiculous how many teams are allowing to play, but it's changed. I mean, I don't think I could go back and coach again. I don't think I want to, but it's changed a lot.
We got to ask this high school coach a question I just thought of too. What do you think of Ohio's point system? Because over in Indiana, we had everybody made the sectional bracket, right? And it's like, I love the point system in Ohio because it like eliminates all those teams that already aren't going to have a shot, right? Like if you go 0-10 in the regular season, you got no business like playing in the postseason. But I know there also has been some scenarios where like a team could go 7-3 or 8-2 and something like that. But this 6-4 team that played like basically a much more challenging schedule gets in. And then there's kind of like some judgment involved. And the point system also is based on some scoring. So that kind of encourages like teams to run up the score and stuff. So what's your opinion of the point system? Is it a perfect system, slightly flawed? Should we keep it?
I think they should go back to 8 teams in each region. There's what is it? 28 regions in the state of Ohio, and 16 teams in each region make the playoffs. So 16 plays 1, 15 plays 2, and so forth. That's too many. And they're trying to make it fair for everybody.
A little more all inclusive.
It's never been about fair. It's been about who's better. It used to be if you were 5-5 and played just a ridiculous schedule, you can make the playoffs. And those teams sometimes went pretty far. That's when you had eight teams in a region. Now you got 16 teams in a region. You can have a 3-7 team make the playoffs now in the state of Ohio. And that thing's going to go out there and they're going to play a number 1 seed and they're going to get spanked. I don't care what 3-7 team you are. I don't care what your schedule's been like. You're going to go up and play a number 1 seed. You're going to get spanked. And I don't think that's fair to the kids. That's not fair to the kids.
That's a good point about the seeds too, because actually in Indiana, like in addition to everybody being added like to the sectional tournament, like it's by a random draw too, like for your bracket. Like it's not even seeded like 1 through 16 or anything like that. Like they just randomly draw these teams, and you might get the two best teams in a first round matchup. And you also could have a scenario where like a team that goes 3-7 could have a path to that championship game, which I don't know. I'm not a fan of that. I am a fan of the point system more so than like all included random draw. But yeah, I think I would be in favor of like a more exclusive postseason too, just because like the playoffs, like in all the professional leagues too, like we've seen the NFL try to add teams and MLB's adding teams, and the NBA, like half the teams make the playoffs. And I'm just like, this is supposed to be like the best of the
Elite,
best. You know
yeah.
what I
And
mean?
I
Yeah.
would even say, Josh, because I just coached, in 2019, I was coaching high school football and I helped out. And I'll tell you, yeah, well, money's one reason, but no,
More money, more TV
and
ratings, more
but
ticket sales.
but coaching at the high school level, I realized even our head coach, right? Like we end up having to play. So the team we beat in the regular season, we end up having to play again in the playoffs, which I'm okay with that. I don't mind that. But it's like you looked at I don't even can't remember who was all in our region or whatever, but like there was like the top 4 seeds or whatever, 4 or 5 seeds were like, they only lost 1 to 2 games. And then you have on the other side of the region, you'd have a team that is, 5-5 or 6-4. And it's like, we got to balance this out so that these good teams don't have to face each other until maybe, hey, later in the rounds as we continue going. And so I noticed that as a coach, it was really frustrating to game plan because you're like, okay, who are we going to play? Oh, if we win this game, we got to play this team. It's like, man, that's a hard road. But so I do get where my dad's coming from. I think they should just kind of slim it down because we're doing too much of this. Hey, you won 6 games. You had a hard schedule. We're going to put you in a good playoff match. Like, no, like you lost 4 games. A team lost 1 game. I don't care if their schedule was light. They lost 1 game. They're better than you. They've won more games than you. And that's the way I think it should be. Your top team should make it that way. And again, I think it goes to that as well. And again, that's why I love high school football. It's weird, it's wonky, the rules are weird, but it's just fun to watch. So, but yeah, I guess that's my thoughts too.
Well, if you got a team that the point system is used to base on your schedule and what you criteria of what you played, and sometimes the 6-4 teams played way better schedule than a team that's 9-1. Their schedule may be very weak, and that 6-4 team might go all the way to and I've seen it. I've seen teams that you're like scratching your head, and it's because of schedule they play. They went all the way and they played in the state championship game. They lost 4 games during the season, and here they are playing for the state title. Look at the MAC, the Midwest Coldwater and Minster and New Bremen and all those teams over there. Oh my goodness, they raise. That's a football program over there. They don't play football until 7th grade.
That's another good point too. Like I think that was not too long ago. There was a school up around here, Gibsonburg. Like they were talking about them potentially going undefeated in the regular season and not getting into the playoffs just because of how weak their schedule was. And we talk about like some of these G5 teams in the college football playoff, like being left out because their schedule wasn't that great. But even more so at the high school level, it sucks for them because it's like they don't have the resources like travel, like cross state and set up like these insane matchups with like teams from say the Columbus area, or if they wanted to like get a big time team on their schedule, like it doesn't work that way like it does at college. So I sympathize a little bit more with the high school teams that don't maybe have the strongest of schedules because they legit can't help it. But overall, I am more in favor of like a more exclusive playoff.
Yeah, and I love what you said about the college football playoff. Because Josh, I think because we're talking about Ohio State, I think we have to ask my dad his thoughts on the college football playoff, because we know that someone that's old school like my dad has to have some great opinions on the fact that 4 teams get to be decided. Now, that's just my thought. Josh, what are your thoughts on it? Let my dad know what your thoughts are on the college football playoff before we let him go off on his beratingness of probably either good or bad. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of there really seems to be like we know who like the 3 best teams are most of the time, and then the 4th is just like, pick one of these like 4 like borderline teams. They're not going to win it anyway. So like It almost seems like the way that, as much as I hated the BCS computer rankings and stuff, like they really didn't miss too much on who the two best teams were. But if Ohio State never wins the national championship as a 4 seed with a third string quarterback, you would never have any of these advocates going for like an 8 or 16 team playoff. Like, so it's really all your guys' fault. So I'm again more in favor of an exclusive playoff, like the 4 teams. I really don't see the point of adding someone that's like 9-3 or 8-4 into the college football playoff. Like if we extend it that long, and people will say like, yeah, well, teams like Texas A&M upset Bama last year, and teams like App State have beaten Michigan. Like it could happen. It's like, well, let's even look at like conference championships, right? Like we haven't really seen any upsets in conference championship games. We really haven't seen any big time major upsets in the college football playoff either. Like it's, I mean, we've known Notre Dame didn't belong in the playoff and it showed. We've known that like Oklahoma doesn't necessarily belong in the playoff and it showed. And it's just like, I think playoffs are better with less teams than more teams.
Dad, what are your thoughts?
Well, I don't like the way this thing's set up now. I think it's not good. I would think 8 would be more acceptable. Maybe, I don't know, something in that nature, and let them come play up north, and let some of them teams come up and have to play when it's, winter practically.
Wouldn't it be cool
here.
if we had like home and away games for the playoffs, which I think that would be a plus if you extended the field.
Oh yeah, that'd be sweet. I'd love to see somebody come into Ohio Stadium in the middle of December. That'd be awesome. Hey, come on up and play us, boys. Let's see how you like this weather. Because see, the excuse of playing in warm weather climate. Okay, you're going to the NFL. They do not all play in warm weather climates. I don't get that argument. I just don't. I don't get that. I don't understand that. I mean, look at the NFL. I mean, you're going to play at Green Bay, and you're talking about not wanting to come up to play in Columbus. To me, that makes no sense. I mean, the NFL is stands for not for long, by the way.
Right.
You don't. I don't. The balancing doesn't. I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't understand they're not thinking too clearly. At least some of the guys in the South aren't thinking too clearly there. Okay, really? Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, whatever.
I mean, from the college standpoint, like they don't really care as much about the NFL because it's like, what kind of competitive advantage can we get? But I'm sure if you ask guys like Aaron Rodgers, who played college ball at Cal, like, wouldn't it have been nice to maybe get some winter games since you're going to be in Green Bay in like a few years when you get drafted, or even Tom Brady being from California and then not only playing college ball in Ann Arbor, but then also the majority of his career in New England. And we see so many like historic games Brady's been in the snow and stuff. And it would be kind of nice for some of these college kids to get that experience.
I would even say, Josh, like this actually, my dad said some genius, by the way. I think it is smart. I think if we want to expand it, we make it home and away. I mean, I don't even know why we don't do that now.
Well, the only reason we don't do it now is because they've made the playoff games like some of the New Year's Six games. So they got like deals with stadiums and stuff like that. But if we had an extended playoff, I don't think they would just make those playoff games like some of the current bowl games. I think they'd actually make it home and away. But yes, this also talks a little bit too. If you can get sponsorships to hold it at certain teams, then yeah, it makes sense.
If you guys aren't watching, my dad just keeps flashing the money symbol because that's pretty much his excuse for everything that's going on right now. It's because it's money, which is not falsely, like it's not false.
It's not true. Wrong. Like, do we think that a playoff game held at like Jerry World, sponsored by like, big time Fortune 500 companies would be more profitable than bowl game at Columbus, Ohio at Ohio Stadium sponsored by nobody? I think the Jerry World game is going to draw a little bit more of a chunk of change.
That is true. But yeah, I think again, I actually like this idea, and I think I'm gonna steal that now.
Jerry World,
I would love home and away playoff.
55,000, Ohio Stadium, 100 to over 100 plus. Be a little bit more ticket sales for that. Hey, by the way, we've never lost to App State, James Yoder.
It's because Ohio State's been too scared to put App State on their schedule, Dave.
We've played some rinky-dink teams before, but we've never lost App State. I'll never forget that game.
A fun game for sure.
Great. Oh, we're getting in trouble now.
We will be in trouble, yes. So maybe we should cut this off and switch to some NFL discussion, because I believe we did want to talk a little bit of Cleveland Browns, right, Ben?
You tossed off the hat.
College hat off. Yes.
I got my Browns mug. We're good.
So I can't remember. Dave, are you a Browns fan like Ben, or are you a Bengals fan like that son we don't talk about?
Yes.
Oh, Bear, we don't talk about. He's saying that we don't talk about Jared's Bengals fandom.
Oh, no. He was brainwashed.
Maybe mom had something to do with that one then.
Sorry,
Mom.
Less. She could care less about sports, to be honest with you, if she had her choice. She probably hates the fact that he's on here right now, to be honest.
Love it. But Cleveland Browns discussion. So we've had you've seen the Browns even before they moved to Baltimore and then were out of the league and then expanded. So you've seen the team go through all these years of not being able to get that quarterback right. Like there's the infamous jersey with all the different names on it. It's over 20 now. And that I feel like they finally landed a QB with Baker Mayfield. And next
He's
thing
pro
you
Mayfield,
know,
by the way.
what's that?
I said you're pro Mayfield, by the way.
I am pro Mayfield, but I'm trying to make it not so biased. But I felt like they maybe I'll buy it off you. Yeah. But I felt like they landed a guy with Baker Mayfield, and then they missed the playoffs last year after he led the team to a playoff victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers, by the way. And they were so close to getting past the Chiefs. They're that Hollywood Higgins fumble safety away from maybe getting to the AFC Championship game. And they decide that the problem all along was Baker Mayfield, and they go and make this trade for Deshaun Watson. And now we see all this stuff unfolding with Watson, and the amount that we had to give up to get him is just not making me happy about the QB situation in Cleveland. Are you happy with it, sir? Is this a move that needed to be made?
Well, for one, Baker Mayfield couldn't read a defense if his life depended on it. He had wide receivers wide open in the flats. So what's he do? Throws downfield. Dude, what are you doing? There's a guy in the flat for the first down, and you're throwing downfield trying to get a guy, and he gets picked off or fumbled or whatever. And the dude couldn't read defenses. I mean, even his year, what'd they rely on? Nick Chubb, pound the ball, pound the rock, pound the rock, pound the rock. And Baker Mayfield was not going to lead him to a championship. I'm not saying that Deshaun Watson is going to be the answer, but Baker Mayfield definitely wasn't the answer. Dude, they said listing him at 6 foot. He was probably 5'10". He couldn't see over the offensive line half the time. And then you're like, where are you? And then I'm like, where are you throwing it? I'm throwing my stuff at the TV. Where are you throwing it? I mean, you got a guy in the flat, and he's throwing it over his head to the guy out there that's double covered in the secondary. I'm like, what kind of throw is that?
And so you can see where my dad stands.
I guess I do not need any further questions, Your Honor. But I do kind of feel a little bit of that frustration because, there'd be replays and we'd have a tight end or running back, like you said, open. But there also was times, especially with Odell Beckham Jr., the guy was just kind of running the routes he wanted to. And so he'd be open, but Baker's not going to see him because he doesn't know what kind of route he's going to run on a play. But there is some truth to your statement. I'll definitely agree with that. But Baker has led the team to a playoff win before. And last year, with the injury and everything, I just felt like they weren't sticking to what made them good the year before. Like you mentioned Nick Chubb. I'm a big Nick Chubb fan. I wish that we would use him a lot more often. Last year, him and Derrick Henry were basically neck and neck for a while there. And Nick Chubb ended up finishing with while they had the same amount of carries, Nick Chubb had more broken tackles, more yards of 20 plus and higher yards per carry and things like that. And I just wish the team last year, especially with the QB being injured, if you must play Baker Mayfield instead of resting him and letting him recover, why not stick more with the run game? The Christmas Day game against Green Bay, Baker Mayfield had 3 picks at halftime. And Nick Chubb had 5 carries. What's making Kevin Stefanski here think that passing is what we should continue to do? And why are we not utilizing our top of the line backfield and top of the line offensive line to get us points?
Well, I think it's a matter of patience. And I don't think too many teams are patient anymore. They don't do the New England is a perfect example. They're patient. They don't care. They get beat up and they lose their quarterback they think they should have. They just keep playing the same way they've always played. He doesn't care. He's not going to change anything. But it just goes to show you that their backups for Cleveland were weak last year, and that's why they kept going with Mayfield. But the coach's fault. As soon as Baker Mayfield busted his shoulder, I said, dude, you're on the bench. There would have been no question without me. I would not have played him. I was like scratching my head, like, what are they doing? I mean, you could see he wasn't healthy and he was hurting the team. And I don't know. I think they were a total disarray last year. Their defense was a top 7 defense. And here I thought, wow, their defense is not very good. But then I look and find out the final stats were like top 7.
I was feeling that too, especially watching games like the Chargers game where we're allowing 49 and like 28 of those came in the fourth quarter. I think like never would have guessed watching game to game that the defense was that high ranked.
Yeah, they were like the top 7 defense. And I was shocked by that. And then I'm thinking, well, maybe this is the route they need to go, is keeping teams to 20 points a game. And then all you need is 25 points a game out of the offense.
Yeah.
And, Deshaun Watson, I don't know if he's the answer or not, but if you're going to punish,
he better be. They're paying $230 million guaranteed.
But if he did what he did, why isn't the courts like arresting him? And why aren't they doing anything with the owners? I mean, where's these owners that were jacking up, like the guy at Washington and then Dallas's owner and then Robert Kraft? And okay, if you're going to do that to Deshaun Watson, you better do something to them. But of course, forget, it's not for long. And it's the owners that own the league, not anybody else. And who does the commissioner work for? The owners.
We would get along great, sir, because I agree a lot with that. I think that Dan Snyder should be receiving some kind of a punishment. I think Robert Kraft should be receiving some kind of punishment. And I mean, Deshaun Watson's gone through 2 criminal court hearings and zero evidence, 0 convictions, and NFL still pushing for like at least a 12-game suspension despite 0 evidence. And I mean, if he didn't do anything, there shouldn't be a suspension.
By the way, he also missed all of last year. So technically he's already served a 16-game suspension, even though it wasn't
already
suspension.
Served a lot, yeah.
So,
and then also at the same time, if Deshaun Watson gets nothing, like Calvin Ridley also should be getting negative. Like he should be paid for extra games.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, for what they're suspending him a whole season for like gambling on games that he wasn't even playing in.
And I think, Josh, you've even said it in the past. And I think I'll ask Dad about this, but you even said something like, you even with all that, you still don't agree with the whole all guaranteed to Deshaun Watson, even with. Let's say you take away the suspension. You even said, even with that, you didn't agree with, giving up.
I didn't, just because I feel like the winning formula was there, like relying on the run and offensive play. And like your dad said, good defensive play. We've seen it be very effective for teams like the 49ers. Like you can say what you want about Jimmy G and ridicule him for only having like 8 pass attempts in playoff games. But it's like, because he doesn't have an ego. He doesn't care if he's not winning those games. Like he can rely on Nick Bosa to like lead a defense and get sacks, and Raheem Mostert and Tevin Coleman, like all those, like that 3-headed monster that they had a few years ago running the way. And I mean, they made it all the way to a Super Bowl with that. Like they were so close. And I feel like the Browns could have done something similar. Like that is a path that can be effective for teams in the NFL that may not have like that Josh Allen level QB or Tom Brady level QB. Like there's other ways to win in the league.
Yeah. And I would say, yeah, I agree with that. And Dad, my question for you is I have 2 questions. 1, how many games do you think Deshaun Watson will end up being suspended? And 2, what do you think your predicted record for the Browns will be at the end of the year? Josh, I believe, what did you say your predicted record was?
I was saying that Deshaun was probably going to miss the first 6 games. Yep. And since those are also the easiest games on the Browns schedule, I think that they can weather that storm with Jacoby Brissett. And I believe my overall record prediction was like 9-8.
Yeah, I said 9-8 as well. And I said 4 games for Deshaun, or 4 or 5, something like that for Deshaun Watson. So Dad, for you, what do you think? How many games will you be spending, and how many games do you see the Browns winning this year?
Well, in this league, it should be the NQL league, no quarterback league. So if you don't have a quarterback, you're not going to win. You got to have a quarterback, and you got to play a quarterback. The quarterback's got to manage these, if nothing else, manage the game. We didn't have that last year because he wasn't managing the game; he was turning the game over. And I think it's 8 games. I think they're going to doink him for at least half the season. I think the judge is going to give out an answer. because not Pete Rozelle, what's his name?
Roger Goodell, commissioner.
Roger Goodell. He's only interested in preserving and not looking bad to women.
He wants to make the league look good. And I feel like he's just gonna like spite suspend to be like, see, we care about women's rights and domestic violence. We don't tolerate that around here.
Yeah, that's all they're after. And so with that being said, I'm more optimistic than you guys are. I think the Browns are going to win 11 or 12 games because their defense it's changed. They've gotten better guys. Look what they got in the third and fourth round. Man, that defensive tackle they got might have been later.
Perrion Winfrey, is that who you're talking about?
Winfrey, that dude's going to be a starter.
I like him too.
He's going to start at defensive tackle, and he's going to be a stud. And then they still got the two-headed monster at defensive end, and their linebacker core didn't get any worse, and their secondary got better. So their defense is going to be really good. Their offensive line is nearly all back. And they got the kid they drafted last year who didn't play had to be thrown in the fire. He's probably going to be better than he was. And their tight end's back, David Njoku. And so
love Njoku.
And so their wide receiver core, whether you like the dude they got from the Cowboys or not, their wide receiver core is going to be better. So I think 11-6 or 12-5. I mean, I'm not going to go crazy and say they're going to win 13 games, but people keep saying, "Oh, the Bengals are going to be back." Dude, this is called not for long. NFL. You've got a target on your back now.
Oh yeah, like it's so hard to continue that pace.
Year. This big zero's on your back, and so I think 11. I think probably closer to 11-6 is probably more accurate. But I mean, look at the AFC. It is brutal. If you're in the NFC, dude, 11-6 will probably make the playoffs. 11-6 in the AFC is probably not going to make the playoffs.
I would agree with that, but I don't agree with the record. I just think it's going to be a tough season. Josh, I don't know about you, but I am so grateful that we had my father on. 2 reasons, Josh, because one, he brought a perspective of a coach, but then he also brought a perspective of a dad joke dad. So I think there's so many phrases in this episode that Josh and I will be clipping and saving for many occasions in the future. Because Josh, what has it been like to have my father? Have you seen a resemblance here between the two of us?
I understand why you are the way you are now, Ben. No, for real though, I've had fun with this too. I'm going to use the meat chicken line on my end a couple times. Hey, you guys all got to like watch the video version though. Like if you are doing audio, like you should turn on the video for at least a little bit.
It is just weird. It is just fullness of weird. But no, we appreciate Dad coming on, and we appreciate Josh as well for just hanging in there last week without me. I even titled it as Josh Takes Over. Josh, I've taken back over. But no, we appreciate Josh and Johnny last week. We appreciate Dad coming on. I mean, he's here. We spent a week in camp, and now we're here. He's spending a week here with us here in Budapest. And so we're super excited to have Dad here and just hearing his knowledge, hearing his opinions. Many I know out there listening will disagree with my dad, but there's one thing I know about my dad is he does not care. And he really doesn't care. He never will care. So you can comment all those things. By the way, all you Michigan fans have been commenting on the videos. I really don't care. And first off, you guys need to fix your English because at least you need to like write it so I can read what's happening because I have no idea what you say sometimes. I'm just saying.
Talk about how great the Michigan difference, the Michigan education is. So you got to show it.
I know you got to show it. You got to show. That's what Chris Drew said. So
one thing you got to do. You know how you get the Michigan man. You know how you get the Michigan man off the porch. You're paying for the pizza.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, we are so getting ruined for this. No, in general, we do thank everyone that's been watching. I just want to point this out, and this goes all to credit to Josh, who has been getting all of our guests on the show. Really, it's all been him. I've barely done anything.
I gotta do something since I'm not doing any kind of production or editing or anything. Yes, I gotta have some value to the table.
This is true. But we do want to just say thanks to Josh because he's got a lot of guests on. And by the way, this is not to put us above anybody else. But for us personally to have two of our video versions of our podcast go over 1,000 views. So 2 of our last 4 episodes, 2 of our last 5 episodes now, including last week's, to go over 1,000 views. That's a thank you to you all. I mean, the fact that everyone has been watching and commenting. Josh, I don't know about you, but that it just feels really good, and it means that we're doing something that everyone likes, and that hopefully we can make more of in the future.
For sure, man. Yeah, we ain't done yet. I got another handful of guests that we hopefully can get on here, and maybe during football season we'll get a couple other repeat guests to come on and just kind of evaluate some of the preseason predictions we made and see how those are turning out. And I mean, we're just kind of having fun with it. That's all we're doing. It's a lot of fun for me. It's a lot of fun for Ben. And
hey, I started this show
working out.
I started this show by myself at this desk a year ago. So literally a year ago. And now here I am with Josh, and I have my dad.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. Like, I know there's sports podcasts out there where it's just one guy talking, but man, that is so hard to do. Just sit there and talk by yourself. Like, it's as much fun as it is for
you, Josh. You really think I mean, that's why.
As much fun, I'm just saying, like, as much fun as it is, even like just talking us two, like when we get guests on, like it's even more fun, like having 3 on. So it's like I can only imagine how much it must suck and how tough it is to just do it by yourself.
That is true. So yeah, to all of you out there, to all of the people that listen to the Baseline on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or you watch on YouTube, we really just want to say thank you. It means a lot. Like, we literally are doing this because we love it. We're having fun doing it. And we want to keep doing it. And again, please comment below things you want to see, people you want us to talk to. If you know somebody, send them to Josh, because I'll forget. So send them to Josh. But no, comment, send us DMs on baseline.podcast on Instagram. We try to post a lot of stories there, and hopefully some more things in the future. So please feel free to do that. And we really appreciate it. If you've loved this episode of the podcast on YouTube, then go ahead and click that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button. Hey, we've already gained 20 subscribers in the last 2 weeks, so I think we can gain more. Josh, I think we can. So we got to keep hitting it. So make sure you do that. That will keep you up to date with all the new episodes, because we've been putting out a lot of episodes like nonstop. So you'll keep up with that. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, make sure you rate us, because that will help.
5-star.
Yes, 5-star it, because that will allow us to get out there more, so more people can listen and everything like that. So once again, we want to thank Johnny last week, and also we want to thank Dad. Thank you for humoring us, and then also having fun. My mom told him to be good. I have a funny feeling when he gets off that plane in a week, I don't know. We don't know. Who knows what's going to happen. But no, we do appreciate it. We have some just fun things coming up in the future episodes. So stay tuned. Tune in next week. And until then, we'll see ya.